So does coronary calcium regression occur? No. It just doesn't. Unfortunately, it was the basis for the Bell's trial, and that was not what people expected. So we can forget about regression. Now, what about progression? Does it have clinical significance? There are 3 trials which were randomized prospective trials, Bell, St. Francis, and studied by Axel Schmiermann, comparing higher doses of lipid-lowering agents versus either placebo or lower doses. And in every one of them, the results were the same. The change in coronary calcium were exactly the same in the treated and untreated groups, irrespective of the endpoints of LDL being much lower in the treated group. So people said progression of coronary calcium is worthless, you see, because it should have progressed less in those whose LDL were reduced more. Next slide. On the other hand, we have several studies which show that progression is important. 500 asymptomatic patients, 41 MIs after 3 years of follow-up. Those who had an MI increased by 42%. Those who were event-free increased by only 17%. Critically, they could not be distinguished by their LDL levels. Next slide. 813 patients. Same finding here. Those who had an MI calcium score increased by 47%. Those who didn't by only 25%. Next slide. And finally, this retrospective data by Raji and Callister showing that if your calcium score increased by less than 15%, your survival was wonderful. By more than 15%, it dropped off very sharply. But it didn't matter where you started from, which I found really fascinating. It didn't matter how high your score was when you started. If you do not progress significantly, your prognosis is superb. If you do progress significantly, your prognosis is worse. To me, this means the atherosclerotic process has progressed unchecked. To me, this means that you have stopped the progression of atherosclerosis. Okay. So, coronary calcium progression, significant progression indicates worse prognosis irrespective of the baseline level. Absence of progression indicates excellent prognosis. Next. Increased progression associated with MI despite the LDL lowering indicates failure of statin treatment to halt plaque formation. Next slide. The similar progression in both the treated and the untreated patient is consistent with all the statin trials, in which at least 2/3 of the patients do no better than placebo, does not support the lack of utility of calcium to track the treatment effect, and I think very critically identifies treatment with non-responders. Next slide. How often should coronary calcium be repeated? The latest paper in JACC suggests that you sort of have a 4-year warranty period for a 0 calcium score. I personally, if I am treating a patient and they've had a baseline calcium score, I feel there's absolutely no way that I can determine their response to therapy other than by repeating the calcium score, even though there is no data to support this, there's no outcome data. I feel like otherwise I'm flying blind. Just by lowering the LDL, I have no guarantee that I'm doing the patient a favor. So I will repeat it at 2 years because I think it's the only way to monitor residual risk.
Okay, well,
problems are reproducibility when you're doing serial scans. And I think we have good reproducibility data. That 15% per year came entirely from EBCT. We need to see similar data from the regular CT scanners, and I'm hoping that the MESA data, which I understand is being analyzed but it's not yet available, will really tell us exactly what's going on.
There are several issues, Harvey, here. One is progression. What's the percentage of progression? If it is below the reproducibility range of 10-15% that they're referring to, or 20%, or above it. If it's below, that's bad, as you know. So, Roger, what do you think?
Harvey and I were talking earlier. I just don't think that we can say that you're going to advocate serial scans if we have all this data that more aggressive lipid lowering doesn't change the amount of calcified plaque. I just think the people who write the guidelines are never going to buy that, and we have the extra radiation, we have the problem with incidental findings. So we just have to be careful as a group for advocating that. And
Yeah.
Matt, I guess at MESA we didn't have enough events when we looked at progression.
Yeah, we're going to look at it. We have a paper coming out, I hope, soon, and looking at mortality, all-cause mortality for my 25,000 patients, showing that if you're over 20% or if you have the Hopkinson progression rate slope, that you have more deaths. So progression equals bad outcomes, but I agree with Roger right now. We just don't know how to mediate that. We don't know how to treat that. So until we have that second answer, we're going to be a little bit hard with the guidelines to recommend progression or repeat scans.
I think that I have to agree with Roger that there is a difficulty with calcium. And there are many patients who will be very well treated and they come in on their follow-up scan and they have more calcification. we don't really know what's happening in many of these cases. Could these be non-calcified plaques that with treatment have become calcified plaques? So that I think that even if they're getting away from the reproducibility problem, if there is absolute progression in a well-treated patient, we don't yet know enough about what that means to be able to
But
recommend
Danny-
that. Well, just one other point though. In the zero calcium score patient, serial testing at every 5-year interval is probably may be warranted. In the patient with the calcium, it's not going to be a one-to-one relationship between progression.
I think the problem is you're saying well-treated patient. I would submit you have no idea if that patient is being well-treated. Just because you've improved the lipid numbers really don't mean anything.
Okay. Well, this issue stays in our agenda. The regression is already addressed. There is no regression. And the zero calcium warranty period is suggested 4 years. As you know, SHAPE suggested 5 years. But repeated coronary calcium is a challenge, and we don't have a strong vote for how to do repeated coronary calcium for monitoring. Perhaps it's not the best tool for monitoring. Even if it is 4 years, that's not a good time period. You'd like to have a better monitoring tool for a shorter period of time. So we're going to move on to the next section. Oh, Michael is asking. Okay, why don't we? Yeah. How many do we have? We have two presentations in the PAD expert panel. Michael has to leave, and I think Emil is after. So let's just start with their slides and go. Michael, go ahead.